Welcome, Bulldog fans and all SEC football fans, especially our guests from Baton Rouge and environs to the south who are coming in for this weekend's game as number 2 Louisiana State faces off against number unranked Mississippi State on Scott Field. 2:39 kickoff tomorrow for CBS. All right, Steve, let's get right to it. We know this is about as uphill a challenge as it gets for the Bulldog football team, not just this year, but probably any year, because LSU is coming in arguably the hottest team in the country.
Yeah, David, and here's another thing, too, that I think maybe many Bulldog fans maybe have forgotten. In the last two meetings between State and LSU has scored 2 touchdowns combined. Just the lone touchdown here in the 37-7 loss in 2017 and a 19-3 win last year. They were gifted the 3-yard line after Nick Fitzgerald interception, so they have a 3-play, 3-yard drive. That's the only 2 touchdowns they've scored. We expect a lot more touchdowns from LSU tomorrow, but hopefully the Bulldogs can come out and acquit themselves a little bit better than they have in recent weeks.
And it is good to remember that last year, that game, State basically handed it over in the first quarter with so many turnovers, backed up field position, and played pretty even for the 3 quarters remaining after that. Again, though, this is an entirely different LSU offense. The maturing of their quarterback, the addition of a new offensive play caller for the passing game has transformed them about as totally as any offense I've seen in my own years covering the SEC from what LSU used to be. You know, we talked to C.J. Morgan and Jaquarius Landrews, 2 of the safeties who will have to cover these guys, or certainly tried to cover these guys, and they say they've never seen anything like it themselves, and they've followed LSU football a long time.
Yeah, and it's true. You know, the addition of Joe Brady, Joe Moorhead GA, has kind of been a game changer for them. You know, Ensminger has been the offensive coordinator, but Joe Burrow has taken some real steps among the national elite. I think a lot of that can be attributed to Joe Brady to kind of come in here and calling plays, you know, to kind of similar to what he wants to run with his skill set with Burrow. And Burrow was a good quarterback last year, David. I think we can all say, but to see his maturation this year, it is something that really kind of boggles the mind. It really shows the difference in what one coach can do.
All right, then let's transition to that. We talked to the defensive players on Wednesday night and some of the staff as well. What can Mississippi State do? And they've struggled defensively. Nobody will deny that. And Coach Shoup even told his players that he hasn't seen an offensive like this in his 30 years of coaching, very rarely. What can this dog defense do, not only to raise their own game, but to just, take on and try to slow down and maybe limit what LSU wants to do offensively?
I think you have got to disguise some coverages. You've got to play the chess match pre-snap. You can't just sit back and let them run those quick slants and that sort of stuff, because that's one of the things, too. If you look at Joe Burrow's completion percentage, it is almost 80%, David, because they do a lot of quick hitting type stuff. They get the ball out so quickly, you don't have a lot of time to get a pass rush. What you have to do is play the game and get in his head and hopefully get some hands or perhaps some Bulldog arms into a passing lane and perhaps turn it into some turnovers. I think just 3 interceptions on the year for Burrow. But the bottom line is Coach Shoup has to have a different game plan this week because it's a different brand of offense.
And, we talk about the obvious challenge secondary faces and the linebackers in coverage. But to be honest, let's look at the front line. Last week at Tennessee, Marquise Spencer was so close to getting several sacks. We've seen that from Chauncey Rivers and Kobe Jones. They've come close to getting sacks, but not quite finishing them. That puts so much pressure on these young defensive tackles, and we obviously expect Lee Autry will not play tomorrow, so Fabian Lovett, Jaden Crumity, Nathan Pickering, other guys like that, they're being thrown into the literal fire tomorrow and say, go beat a really good offensive line and get after a very smart quarterback who gets rid of the ball quickly.
Well, not to be forgotten, too, LSU's recruited exceptionally well at the running back position, and that's kind of been overshadowed a bit by the exploits of this passing game. But you're right, Dave, this is a very inexperienced Mississippi State front. You've got some guys with some experience at the ends, but they're mainly role players. But you've got basically brand-new guys out there, Nathan Pickering being a guy that's been in a rotation some. That bodes well for the future. It doesn't necessarily bode well for this weekend, but the bottom line is State has just got to come out and do some things differently. If you just line up and run a base defense against LSU, it would be an exceptionally long day.
Offensively, of course, Joe Moorhead confirmed Monday basically what he told us at Knoxville on Saturday, that Garrett Schrader will indeed be the starter for this game. And this time, Steve, it doesn't have anything to do with health. It simply has to do with the fact that Garrett Schrader has shown he can inspire something in this offense. Do you foresee a role for Tommy Stevens, though, as well tomorrow, or do you think that having made this change in starter for other reasons than injury, do you think he rides with it? Or do we even have a clue at this point?
Well, I think he rides with it, and you kind of got the sense on Saturday that maybe there wasn't the finality of it, but that Joe was kind of leaning that way, because here's the reality of it. Tommy Stevens has just proven that he can't stay healthy. That's nobody's fault. That's just kind of how things have worked out. But Garrett is the guy now, and I think it's one of those things, too. You're 3-3. You're not 5-1. So you're not really in contention for some big things. I think in many ways you're playing for the future. But in the present tense, Garrett Schrader gives you the best chance to win, not just this week, but every week. And if you're going to sow seeds in another quarterback, you want to do it in one that's going to be here. We know Tommy Stevens won't be here next year. We don't feel like Keaton Thompson will be here. And then there's questions about Jalen Mayden's availability. I don't think he's dressed most games this year. And so Garrett Schrader has the job, not by default, David, but because simply he has been the Bulldogs' best offensive weapon, not wearing number 8. And I think 8 benefits from having Garrett Schrader under center.
And I think 8 would benefit from having the ball thrown to him a few times, because I certainly don't expect them to line up and just hammer away and get it. But that's something we'll talk about tomorrow as well. Garrett Schrader's had one bad passing game. That was the Kansas State game. But he told us he did not expect to play in that game, so I don't think for once he was not ready. Every other game, even the Auburn game when they put him in there, he didn't show any fear. This is not a usual freshman. You would think that putting a true freshman out there against a team like LSU and saying, go match points with the best team in the country, would rattle a lot of kids. Garrett Schrader is a different dog all around.
He absolutely is, David. And one of the things about him, he's not scared to make a mistake. That's one of the things a lot of freshmen, they get out there and they play tight and they're indecisive because they're so worried about messing up. Schrader just has some maturity kind of beyond his years. We got a Farrad Green piece up today, and one of the things I spoke with Farrad about is, what makes him a good quarterback? What makes him bring spark to the offense? And he just kind of grins and he goes, we know that he will lay his body on the line for the betterment of the team. I don't know that that's always been the case, and I think Nick Fitzgerald was a warrior for Mississippi State, and I think Schrader has some of the better qualities of Nick Fitzgerald in his game and probably a better passer at this point in his development. But I think Mississippi State has found the future face of their football program in Garrett Schrader.
But that's the future. The immediate future is tomorrow at 2:30 for CVS viewing pleasure. Mississippi State host LSU. Yes, the odds are long against the Bulldogs. Mississippi State is healthy going into this game. The offensive line is in good shape. We expect all the receivers to be available. And as far as suspensions, that should not affect the offensive side of the ball tomorrow as well. We'll learn more about it as we go in the usual list of who is available, who's not, we posted. But we don't think there will be any changes in that tomorrow as well. By now, we know the drill of who will and who won't play at this point. And by the way, we want to thank SEC Nation for offering us the use of their set as they're setting up here at the Junction for tomorrow's show 11. But we decided we don't need to overshadow those guys. But no, it wouldn't be fair to them for us to use it there and set a standard for the day.
Well, it's about time Tim Tebow got us some attention anyway, so we don't mind sharing our field a little bit with him. But, yeah, it's a great day for Bulldog fans. And listen, I know there's not a lot of high hopes for the ball game tomorrow, but it's going to be a great day on campus. SEC Nation is here. That'll be big. They'll be broadcasting live from the Junction. The fans will turn out for that. The Paul Feinbaum show this afternoon here. So we don't get these opportunities very often, David. So anytime that we can celebrate football on the Mississippi State campus, we want to take part in that.
Other things happening on campus today, by the way, the SC Nation crew will be available, a couple of them, for interviews, and I hope to talk to Mr. Tebow and Jordan Rogers as well, 2 former college quarterbacks, very successful. I want to talk to them about Garrett Schrader and how things handle quarterbacks, because they, too, went their ups and downs. They started early with precocious starts. I'd like to get their viewpoints on what it really takes to make a great quarterback in the SEC and maybe have a piece to run next week. We have some baseball this afternoon as well, Steve, at Duty Field. I think we have a media availability at 2:45 with Coach Chris Lemonis and various players to kind of sum up what's happening in fall ball.
Yeah, it's true, and that's the thing too, David. That's kind of winding down. The Bulldogs will be back in action on Sunday against UAB, pretty much the final baseball scrimmage of the year, and those have been beneficial to Mississippi State. But the schedule came out earlier this week, and it's like it never ends. If you want a rooting interest, you've always got one here at Mississippi State. We'll be starting men's and women's basketball here in a couple of weeks. They had their media days this week, and so excited about what is to come. But right now, the bigger issue is football. And we'll get ready to go tomorrow and hopefully have a great turnout of Bulldog fans.
Weather forecast is very good for you. A high of 71 tomorrow. Not very high by my standards, but that's okay. I'm sure you fans will enjoy it after sweltering through September. But remember, this is your only home game in October, so whatever you think of the mismatch, just come watch the football game. As Steve and I like to remind you, you only get 7 chances like this every year. You won't have another chance again until November when the Bulldogs are hosting that 3-game set as well. So take advantage of it, turn out, and be nice to the Tiger fans. They're such gentle, mild-mannered, soft-spoken people out there. But the trick is, if you are nice to them, I think you will be very well rewarded in what they bring to you to tailgate there. So, Steve, all the years you spent down the Baton Rouge area, you can attest to this as well. So, And by the way, we want to wish our colleague Robbie, he had a surgery yesterday for an appendectomy, but he's bounced back fine, says he'll be in good shape. We don't know when he'll be back on the job, but we certainly are good to hear that, and we want you to think about him as well for our crew here at Gene's Page 24/7. So from the Junction at Mississippi State University outside Davis Wade Stadium on Friday pregame. Tomorrow, Mississippi State hosts LSU. For Steve Robertson, this is David Murray.